The barn request. The boy gripped the split railgate and said, "We'll sleep in the barn, sir." And the sore sounded bigger than he was. Colt Mercer had seen men bluff hunger with swagger. He'd never seen a child hold still so the shaking wouldn't show. The widow behind him hugged a bundle wrapped in faded blue, high against her heart, as if letting go would cost more than sleep. "Names?" Colt asked. "Finn," the boy said. "My ma is Tessa. We won't trouble your house." Tessa kept her eyes moving. Dust clung to her hair. The bundle shifted with a stubborn weight and a thin, metallic clink. Not bread, not a baby, something that remembered iron. Colt unlatched the gate. "You'll not sleep with stock while I'm above ground," he said. "There's stew and a pump." Tessa tightened her grip. "We don't sit at tables now," she murmured. Finn glanced at the porch and counted chairs anyway. "Stew cools fast," Colt said. "Waste is a sin." They crossed boards that sighed. In the kitchen he set 3 spoons. Tessa would not lay the bundle down. The blue slipped. A brass eagle button flashed. She snatched it close again. The sight hit him so clean a tear rose and held. Finn ate like someone trained not to look greedy. Tessa did not eat. "Long road?" Colt asked. "Longer than we meant," she said. Finn whispered, "We came where the map ends," as if maps had edges. Colt set bread by her hand. "There's a back room," he said. "Morning sun? Beds that don't judge?" A shadow of a smile touched her mouth. "Sunlight is a luxury." The bundle shifted again. Colt busied his hands. His brother Asa had not come home. The eagle's brass winked, a signal from a past he kept shut. "Storm coming?" Tessa asked. "Only the usual," he said, though something else was gathering in him. Pump water had splashed the table. He slid the bundle from the wet patch. It was heavier than it looked. The cloth rasped. "Careful," Tessa said, stepping in without thinking. "It breaks easy." "What breaks easy and clinks like iron?" He set it on the dry edge. Thread scratched his thumb where a seam had been repaired by small, patient stitches, the kind done at night. He felt raised letters under the hem. He turned a corner just enough to see a name tape ghosted by wear. 2 initials showed in faded thread. A.M. The room narrowed. Many men could fit those letters. Only one emptied his breath. Finn's eyes went from the bundle to Colt, measuring danger in grown-ups. "If we should go, we can go," Tessa said. Colt heard boot leather in memory, Asa's laugh, the last letter that ended short. He looked at the blue cloth and felt the old field tilt under his feet. "No," he managed, softer than he meant. "You'll stay." He set the bundle down as if laying a loaded truth. A drop of water stopped on the stitched initials like a tear not sure whose face it belonged to. "After you wash," he said, finding steadier voice, "I'll show your room." Finn nodded, but his gaze stayed on the blue. Tessa's fingers tightened once, then eased. His hands began to shake despite everything he told them. Colt reached for a towel. The brass eagle turned toward him, catching lamplight like a signal, and the initials burned clearer. Asa Mercer. 2 words his house hadn't heard in years. Colt Mercer stood with his jaw locked, the towel clenched so tight in his hand that water seeped through to the floorboards, and he could not pull his eyes from those letters stitched in thread that time itself should have erased. Asa Mercer. His brother's name. His brother who never returned from war, whose body was said to lie in unmarked soil hundreds of miles east. Tessa noticed his stare and pulled the coat close again, hugging it as if she feared he might tear it away. But the tremor in her wrist betrayed her. Finn, spoon still in hand, sensed the current that charged the air and whispered, "Ma, what is it?" She forced a smile that hurt to look at and said, "Nothing, child. Eat." But her gaze never left Colt, waiting for the storm she had clearly feared since stepping on his porch. Colt tried to steady himself with reason, telling himself many men bore the same initials, many coats bore brass eagles, yet the weight in his chest said otherwise, because Asa had been the only one with a seam at the left shoulder sewn crosswise by their mother's hands when the war tore it once before. Colt's throat tightened, memory forcing its way in. Asa, laughing as he tugged the coat on, saying he'd bring it home cleaned by victory. Now here it was, dirty with years, and clutched by a woman he had never seen before. "Where did you get that?" Colt asked, voice rough as gravel. Tessa stiffened, her fingers white on the fabric. "It's not theft," she said quickly, desperate. "I kept it safe." "Safe from who?" Colt demanded. Finn's eyes darted between them, fear and confusion rising. "He gave it to me," Tessa whispered, though her tone wavered between truth and survival. "Who?" Colt's voice shook the rafters. "Asa Mercer himself? Speak plain, woman." She looked down, her breath hitching, then back up, eyes wet. "On a field where men lay quiet forever. He said one name before the light left him. Yours." The room spun for Colt, the edges blurring, because the impossible had just been spoken. Asa alive long enough to entrust his coat to a stranger. He spoke? Colt pressed, as if the walls themselves needed proof. "He spoke, but not long," Tessa said. "He asked me to keep his words. I swore I would." She swallowed hard. "But words alone do not keep a child alive, and so I carried both." She gestured faintly to Finn, whose fork hovered in frozen air. Colt's pulse thudded. "You mean to tell me my brother's last breath fell into your hands, and you come here years later with no proof but a coat?" She met his fury with a steadiness that was half defiance, half prayer. "The coat, and the truth I've carried every mile. But if you'd rather see us gone, say so now." Finn flinched, eyes already wet, preparing to leave. Colt slammed his hand flat on the table, the sound snapping the lamplight. "No," he growled, softer after the echo. "You're not leaving until I know every word. My brother gave you." Silence pressed tight as rope. Tessa set the coat down, slow and deliberate, her shoulders trembling under the weight of years she had hidden. "Then you'd better listen close, Mr. Mercer," she said, and the way her voice broke on his name told him whatever she carried was heavier than the coat itself and far more dangerous. "You said," Colt's knuckles went white on the edge of the table as Tessa laid the coat flat, smoothing the worn fabric as if she were afraid it might crumble under her touch, and when she finally spoke, her voice was the thin thread that tied years of silence to this one moment. "He said 4 words, she whispered, looking nowhere but the brass eagle that gleamed in the lamplight. "Don't dig where lightning struck." The phrase rattled in Colt's head like a loose nail in a barrel, senseless yet sharp, and for a moment he thought it the delirium of a dying man. But then Tessa's eyes lifted and held his, as if daring him to dismiss it. "He pressed that coat to me and said it would keep me safe until I found his kin," she continued, her hand trembling as she traced the seam. "But it drew danger instead, for others heard him speak before he fell silent." Colt leaned closer, his pulse pounding. Danger meant names, and names meant enemies, but she seemed to hesitate, as though one more truth might burn the air between them. "Who?" he demanded, his voice low, almost pleading. "A man who followed us since," she said, shivering at memory. "A man Asa called Hollis with his last strength, and I swear that name was a curse, not a blessing." The name struck Colt harder than a hammer, for Hollis was not some shadow out east, but a respected cattle buyer in these parts, a man who had shaken Colt's hand in church and traded herds in broad daylight. Could Asa's curse mean the man he thought decent wore a darker face? Finn looked between them, confusion brewing, then tugged at his mother's sleeve. "Ma, will Hollis find us here too?" he asked, and Tessa's silence was answer enough. Colt felt the kitchen grow smaller, the night pressing against the windows as if listening for weakness, and he thought of Asa's warning, lightning and digging and curses wrapped in riddles. He reached for the coat, his thumb finding an uneven seam, and when he pulled at it, the lining split to reveal a packet stitched into the cloth, stiff with paper and age. He froze, staring at the hidden pocket as though it might breathe, then drew it out slow, revealing a folded paper sealed with wax, cracked by time. "Asa left more than words," Colt muttered, his voice hollow, but before he could unfold the secret, hoofbeats echoed faint on the road outside, too steady to be chance, and Finn gasped, "He's here, Ma," while the lamp flame flickered hard, as if afraid. The sound of hoofbeats grew closer, steady as a drum of war, each strike against the dirt road carrying the promise of arrival, and Colt's body stiffened, as though every muscle remembered battlefields he had sworn never to walk again. He folded the brittle packet in his fist and shoved it inside his vest, eyes darting toward the window where lamplight trembled against the glass. Finn slid from his chair, his small hand clutching Tessa's dress, the boy's face pale with a fear too old for his years. "Stay back from the window," Colt ordered, his voice low but sharp, and Tessa obeyed, pulling Finn close, the coat still clutched in her other hand like a shield fashioned from memory. The hoofbeats slowed, crunching gravel now, circling the house with the patience of a predator, and then stilled altogether. Silence pressed, broken only by the wheeze of the lamp flame. Colt reached for the shotgun propped by the hearth, its weight familiar, steadying, but his heart was not steady. His brother's name, Asa's warning, the cursed name Hollis all twisting like storm winds inside him. A man's voice came from the yard, carrying through the boards, polite but edged with something darker. "Mercer, evening to you. Heard you took in strays." Colt froze, the words barbed in their courtesy, and Tessa's eyes widened, her hand over her mouth, because she knew the voice without seeing the man. "Hollis," she whispered, barely sound, and Finn whimpered, burying his face against her waist. Colt stepped forward, shotgun angled but not raised yet, and pushed open the door enough to meet the night. Hollis sat on his horse at the fence, hat tipped, smile too broad for midnight. His eyes found Colt, then slid to the faint silhouettes inside the room. "I'll take what belongs to me," Hollis said, voice still smooth as if asking for sugar, but his hand rested heavy on the butt of his revolver. "Nothing here bears your mark," Colt answered, forcing calm, though his pulse thundered. "You're mistaken." Hollis chuckled low. "Mistakes are costly, Mercer. That woman carries what was promised to me, and I intend to collect." Tessa's breath hitched, fear breaking through her composure. "He lies," she said, clutching Finn tighter. "He followed since that night. Asa never spoke his name as friend." Colt's grip tightened on the shotgun, the memory of Asa's laugh against this man's false claim scraping like flint. "You'll not step on this porch," Colt warned, his voice steel. Hollis leaned forward, the horse's bridle creaking, and his smile faded into something colder. "You think your walls will stop me? You've no idea what Asa owed." At the name, Colt's stomach turned, the packet in his vest burning like a brand. Did Asa truly owe this man, or was Hollis twisting truth like a rope around their necks? He swallowed hard, the weight of choice pressing in. Behind him, Finn whispered, "Don't let him take us," and those words settled like iron in Colt's spine. He leveled the shotgun across the porch rail, breath steady now, the barrel glinting in the moonlight. "Then step closer, Hollis," he said, voice carrying through the dark, "and we'll see if Asa's debt outlived him." The night held its breath, and in that razor-thin pause, Hollis's hand twitched toward his revolver. The moment Hollis's hand twitched toward the revolver, the night cracked wide open, Colt firing a warning shot into the dirt just feet from the horse's hooves, and the animal reared, neighing, forcing Hollis to clutch the reins and curse, but his smile never faltered even as dust swirled between them. "Mercer," he drawled, his tone too calm for the fire in his eyes. "You think you're defending some poor widow and her whelp, but you're blind. That coat she carries isn't just memory. It's proof of a debt your brother never paid, and I'll collect it one way or another." Colt's blood went cold, because beneath the threat there was conviction, not bluff, and he felt the paper packet against his chest as though it burned through the cloth, demanding to be opened. "Speak plain," Colt demanded, voice steady, though his insides shook. Hollis leaned low in the saddle, words dropping like stones. "Asa promised me land, half this valley, signed his name on it in blood when he couldn't pay me in coin. That contract's stitched into that coat, and if you think you can bury it, you'll lose more than your pride." Colt's jaw tightened, his mind racing. He had believed Asa died a soldier's death, honorable and clean, not tangled in bargains that would bleed into the present. But here was Hollis naming the price as though the grave itself had spit out debt. Behind him, Tessa clutched Finn, her face pale but her eyes sharp, as if she knew more than she'd yet spoken. "He lies," she whispered again, but her voice trembled, and Colt heard in it not certainty but desperate hope. Hollis tapped his revolver against his thigh. "I'll return tomorrow, Mercer. You think on it? Give me what's mine or I'll take it with fire." He wheeled his horse, hooves striking sparks from stone, and galloped into the dark, leaving silence that pressed heavier than any shot fired. Colt shut the door, his hands shaking as he lowered the shotgun. "Tell me the truth," he said, voice low, eyes on Tessa. "What did Asa give you that man wants?" Tessa's grip on the coat faltered, and with trembling fingers she reached inside the lining where Colt had already torn the seam. From it she pulled a second bundle, smaller, wrapped in oilskin and sealed with wax unbroken. She placed it on the table like an offering too heavy to hold. "Asa said it would damn us both if opened," she whispered, "but if you doubt me, break the seal now." Colt stared at the bundle, the lamplight catching the faint mark pressed into the wax, a symbol he recognized not from Asa's hand, but from deeds signed in town, the very seal of Hollis himself. The room spun with the weight of betrayal, grief, and the possibility that Asa had not just died with honor, but tangled in a darkness Colt had never dreamed. He reached for the bundle, thumb pressing the edge of the seal, heart hammering, torn between his brother's dying warning and the need to know the truth, when Finn's small voice broke the silence with a question that cut deeper than any blade. "Mister, if my pa gave you trouble, does that mean we can't stay?" Colt's hand froze on the bundle, the boy's innocent question slicing through the storm of betrayal and doubt, and in that fragile silence, the lamplight flickered like a heartbeat too fast. He turned slowly, meeting Finn's wide eyes, and something in the boy's face, fear wrapped tight with hope, stirred a rage in Colt deeper than any debt or contract could summon. "You'll stay," he said firmly, though his throat burned with grief. "No child pays for the sins of men." Tessa exhaled a sound, halfway between sob and prayer, her shoulders sagging as though she'd been holding breath for years. Colt's gaze returned to the wax seal, its mark pressing like a brand into his thoughts, and though Asa's warning echoed in his skull, Don't dig where lightning struck. Colt felt the storm already breaking over them. He pressed the packet flat against the table, listening to the crinkle of brittle paper within, the sound of truths eager to speak. If Asa bound himself to Hollis, why give this to you? Colt asked, his eyes never leaving Tessa. Her hand stroked Finn's hair, steadying him. Because he didn't trust Hollis, nor the law, nor even his own breath to last. He said your name, Colt. He said you'd know what to do when the day came. Colt wanted to believe, but the seed of doubt gnawed, and Hollis's smile burned fresh in his mind. He leaned closer, studying her, searching for deceit, but her eyes shone with a fierce, weary honesty. Still, one truth pressed heavier than the rest. Asa had bargained, and bargains left ghosts. Colt pushed from the table, pacing the floor, his boots thudding on boards that suddenly felt too thin to hold the weight of past and present. If Hollis brings fire, he won't come alone, Colt muttered, half to himself. He'll bring men paid in coin and promised spoils. Finn flinched, clutching tighter to his mother. Tessa's voice hardened, breaking through fear. Then we can't stay, she said. Not if it means your land burns. Colt spun on her, eyes fierce. This isn't about land, it's about Asa and debts that carry blood in their ink. If Hollis means to collect, he'll face me first. He slammed the butt of his shotgun against the floor as if to swear it. But when his rage quieted, a heavier truth settled. Even a man with iron in his hands can't stand against fire and numbers. He looked back at the bundle, the wax seal glinting like an eye that saw too much. He thought of Asa's smile, Asa's laugh, Asa's promise to come home, and now Asa's bargain rising from the grave to crush them all. Colt sank into his chair, the weight of decision pressing down. If I open this, there's no turning back, he said. Tessa reached across, her fingers brushing the back of his hand, her touch trembling but steady enough to anchor him. Sometimes, she whispered, the only way out of darkness is through it. Colt closed his eyes, breath heavy, then opened them with steel. His thumb pressed against the wax, just enough to crack its edge. But before the seal could break, a sound split the night. The long, mournful call of a coyote, answered by another, then another, and Colt knew in his bones they were not alone on the prairie tonight. The coyote calls bled into silence, but Colt's instincts told him they were no natural chorus. It was signal, not song, and every hair on his neck bristled as though unseen eyes were already crawling over the ranch. He pushed back from the table, the wax-sealed bundle still trembling in his hand, and strode to the window. Beyond the fields, faint on the horizon, he saw what no man with land ever wishes to see. A thread of smoke rising against the moonlight, thin but deliberate, a warning fire lit where no homestead lay. He's marking the night, Colt muttered, his chest tightening. Hollis wants me to know he owns the dark. Tessa stood quickly, clutching Finn close, her voice cracking. He's done this before, burned a widow out in Kansas. They called it lightning, but I saw the match in his hand. Colt's stomach turned as Asa's words replayed. Don't dig where lightning struck. Truth now clear. Hollis was the lightning, and Asa's debt the storm. He turned, the bundle heavy with its seal, and slammed it onto the table. If this holds his contract, then Asa's ghost has left me no choice but to face it. His thumb pressed harder, the wax cracking faintly, when the sound of hooves rolled again, nearer this time, more than one horse, maybe 5 or 6. Finn whimpered, "They're coming, mister!" And his voice carried the same terror Colt remembered in young soldiers cornered on fields where hope had already bled out. Colt seized the shotgun, racked it sharp, and shoved the bundle inside his vest. "Tessa, take the boy to the root cellar. Now." But Tessa did not move. Her chin lifted, her eyes burning with a fire that surprised him. "I won't hide," she said. "Not again. Asa gave me that coat so I'd carry truth, not bury it. If Hollis takes me, he wins. If I stand, he fails." Colt stared at her, struck by the steel in her voice, and in that moment saw not a frightened widow, but the last witness to his brother's final breath. The hoofbeats drew closer, the creak of saddles, the low mutter of men. Colt stepped onto the porch, the boards groaning under his boots, and leveled the shotgun toward the dark. "This land's mine," he called, his voice rolling like thunder. "Any man who crosses the fence tonight will pay in blood." The night gave no answer but the shifting of horses, the hiss of men conferring just out of sight. Then a voice rose, not Hollis's but one of his riders, mocking, "You can't guard ghosts, Mercer." Debts come due. Colt tightened his grip, heart pounding. Behind him he felt Tessa's presence in the doorway, the coat draped across her arms like a banner, Finn clutching her skirt. The sight stiffened his spine, for Asa's blood still lived in memory and duty, and Colt would not see it stolen. He steadied his breath, the trigger cool beneath his finger, and waited for the first shadow to break the line. When from the tree line to the west came the sudden gleam of torches, too many to count, the firelight spilling over the fields, and Colt's gut clenched as he realized Hollis had not come with half a dozen men, but with a small army, flames already licking the wind. The torches bobbed like a river of fire spilling across the prairie, dozens of riders moving slow and deliberate, their faces shadows, but their intent clear as day, and Colt felt the porch boards tremble beneath his boots, as if the earth itself recoiled. Hollis's voice rose above the march, calm and cruel. "Mercer, I told you lightning would strike. Now hand me what's mine." Colt's grip on the shotgun tightened, his breath a low growl, but the numbers out there would smother him quick if he fired. Behind him, Tessa held the coat tighter, and Finn clung to her legs, wide-eyed. Colt thought of Asa, the warning, the phrase he'd carried since boyhood. "Don't dig where lightning struck." His thumb brushed the cracked wax in his vest, and for the first time he realized the warning might not be about fear, but about timing. Lightning strikes to reveal, not to bury. He tore the bundle open, the wax snapping under his thumb, and unfolded the stiff pages within. By lamplight he scanned the first, his pulse hammering. Hollis's name was there, scrawled bold, but so was Asa's signature, and beneath it, in ink faded but legible, a second signature, Hollis's own. Colt's eyes widened. The man had signed twice, once as lender, and once fraudulently as witness for Asa, a trick of law to bind land to himself. And scrawled across the margin, in Asa's unmistakable hand, was a single line written hastily, likely as his life bled away. "If Colt finds this, no Hollis lies." Colt's throat closed, grief and fury surging together. "You cursed dog," he muttered. He turned to Tessa, thrusting the papers toward her. "Asa didn't damn us. He saved us. This proves Hollis forged his claim." Tessa's hands trembled as she read, her lips moving over Asa's last words, tears cutting lines down her face. Outside, Hollis barked again. "Mercer, you've minutes before fire takes the roof. Step out with the coat or watch your land burn." Colt folded the papers back into his vest, heart steadied now by truth instead of doubt. "He's lied to half the county," Colt said, voice hard. "This proves it, but proof won't matter if we're ash before morning." He turned toward the porch, shotgun in hand, when Finn tugged his sleeve, whispering, "There's more." The boy pointed to the coat's hem, where Colt had ripped earlier. Colt knelt, fingers probing the seam, and pulled free a second slip of paper. Smaller, almost overlooked. He unfolded it, breath caught. It was a map. Rough, hurried, but marked with a cross in the hills west of the ranch, the words scratched beneath in Asa's hand. Lightning struck here. Colt stared, realization flooding him. Asa's warning wasn't about staying away, it was about finding what Hollis feared buried. Proof, leverage, maybe gold or deeds, something Hollis would burn a county to erase. He rose, the map shaking in his fist. "We're not staying to burn," he said. "We're going." "To the hills." But as he spoke, the first torch sailed from the dark, arcing through the night toward his barn roof, and the dry straw caught with a roar that split the silence wide open. The barn went up in an instant, straw snapping like tinder, flames clawing skyward, the horses inside screaming, their kicks shaking the ground as if they too begged for deliverance. And Colt's heart clenched because this wasn't just stock burning, it was his livelihood, his father's sweat, his bloodline smoldering before his eyes. He sprang from the porch, shotgun braced, blasting the first torchman who dared ride closer, the man tumbling from his saddle, torch rolling harmless into dirt. But there were too many. Shadows circling, flames spreading, Hollis's voice carrying like a preacher at revival. "Let it burn, boys. He'll crawl out with the truth or the fire will cook it from him." Colt ducked back to the porch, smoke curling around him, coughing hard. Tessa stood firm in the doorway, Finn pressed behind her, the coat still gripped like a banner, the map clutched in her other hand now. "If we stay, we die," she said, voice steady despite the terror in her eyes. "The hills, Colt. Asa meant for you to find what he buried." Colt stared at the barn, every instinct screaming to save the beasts that had carried him through winters. But then he looked at Finn's face, smeared with fear and hope, and knew flesh outweighed horseflesh tonight. "Grab what you can carry," he barked. He slung a saddlebag from the peg, shoving the documents inside, water skins too, his mind racing on paths through the creek beds that could hide their flight. Outside, torches swung like stars in the dark, men laughing, whooping, the fire painting their faces wild. Hollis called again, mocking, "Run if you like, Mercer, but I'll hunt you from these hills to the sea. You can't outrun debt." Colt spat in the dirt. "Not debt, your lies." He jerked his head to Tessa. "Now." They slipped out the back, into the tall grass beyond the smoke, Colt covering their trail, leading them toward the line of cottonwoods that shadowed the creek. Behind them, the barn groaned as its roof caved, sparks shooting into the sky like fireworks of ruin. Finn gasped at the sound, but Colt squeezed his shoulder. "Don't look back, son," he said, the words slipping out unplanned but true. They crept down into the creek bed, water cool against their boots, firelight dimming behind them. The night air carried the stink of smoke and sweat, and the cry of men fanning outward to search. Tessa clutched the map tight to her chest, whispering, "Lightning struck here," as if repeating it gave them strength. Colt studied the inked cross, his mind marking each ridge and draw. Asa had left him not just a warning but a path, and Hollis would burn half the world to keep him from walking it. Above them, a torchlight flared at the edge of the bank, a rider peering down, eyes scanning the dark water where they crouched, and Colt raised a finger to his lips, his shotgun poised. One wrong breath would bring the fire straight into their hiding place. The rider's torchlight skimmed the creek bed, wavering across rocks slick with algae, and Colt held his breath so long his chest burned, one finger pressed to his lips while the other tightened on the shotgun's trigger. Finn's tiny hand clutched his mother's skirt, trembling, and Tessa shut her eyes, whispering prayers so faint they merged with the night breeze. The rider leaned forward, suspicious, his torch dipping lower, the horse snorting at the scent of water. But just then a shout rose from the east side of the ranch. "Flames are spreading, barn's gone!" and the rider jerked his head, yanked the reins, and galloped off, leaving them cloaked in darkness once more. Colt exhaled slow, sweat beading his temples despite the night chill, and motioned them onward, keeping to the creek as it bent westward toward the hills marked on Asa's map. Smoke trailed them, carried by wind, and every crack of brush above made Colt's nerves spark, but the shadows worked to their favor, the tall cottonwoods swallowing their shapes. They trudged until Finn's legs faltered, the boy stumbling in water that reached his knees, and Colt hoisted him up without a word, cradling him against his chest the way he once carried wounded soldiers. Tessa touched the coat draped over her arm, like it was relic and shield alike. "You believe me now?" she whispered, and Colt, though torn, gave a short nod. "I believe Asa trusted you, and that's enough." Her eyes glistened, but she said no more, the weight of exhaustion heavy on her shoulders. Hours passed like slow thunder until the moon sank low and the hills loomed black and jagged, the very place Asa had marked. Lightning struck here. Colt climbed the bank, boots sinking into loose earth, and led them into a narrow ravine where boulders piled like fallen giants. He unfolded the map, squinting by lantern light shielded with his palm. The cross was marked against a cleft in stone that looked near to a wolf's jaw, and sure enough, there ahead jutted a formation sharp as teeth. He pushed forward, chest tightening with anticipation and dread. Hollis had sent men, fire, lies, but Asa had sent him here. And what waited beneath those rocks might be the salvation of their name, or the ruin Hollis counted on. Colt climbed higher, fingers scraping stone, when he saw it. A hollow in the rock sealed crudely with clay, cracks showing where rain had washed some away. "Here," he muttered, heart hammering. Tessa climbed beside him, breath ragged. "What is it?" Colt scraped at the clay, pulling free the hardened chunks until something wooden showed beneath, a box small enough to be carried but heavy with promise. He tugged, the wood groaning, and freed it from the hollow. The lid bore Asa's initials burned in with a soldier's knife, rough but sure. Colt's throat tightened. "Brother," he whispered, then lifted the box, knowing what lay inside could damn or deliver them. Behind him, faint as a rattle of bones, came the sound of loose stones shifting, and when he turned, torchlight flickered at the mouth of the ravine. Hollis's riders had found the trail, and there was no more night left to hide in. Torchlight licked the walls of the ravine, shadows stretching like claws as riders fanned out at the mouth, their laughter cold, and Hollis's voice cut through the dark like a saw on bone. "There he is, boys. The loyal brother digging in the grave where he belongs. Bring me the box." Colt stood on the ledge above the hollow, the wooden chest heavy in his arms, Asa's initials burning into his palms like brands of memory. Tessa pulled Finn behind a boulder, her eyes wide but her jaw firm, clutching the coat tight, while Colt planted his boots, shotgun braced, daring the night to break. Hollis dismounted, his silhouette sharp against firelight, his smile serpentine. "Colt, you can't fight a dozen men with one scattergun. Hand it over. You've no idea what you're holding." Colt's breath rasped, but his voice carried iron. "I know it's Asa's, and that means it isn't yours." Hollis chuckled, shaking his head. "Your brother was desperate. That box is proof of it. He signed land, rights, every acre you walk. Open it and see. Your name already lost." The words stabbed, but Colt remembered the second paper, Asa's scrawl declaring Hollis a liar. He set the box on the stone, hands trembling as he worked the latch. The wood groaned, splitting a seam, and inside lay bundles of papers wrapped in oilcloth, more contracts than he could count, each bearing Hollis's name alongside marks of men long dead or long cheated. Tessa leaned forward, eyes wide. "It's not debt, it's his fraud," she whispered. Colt flipped a page, heart hammering. The signatures forged, the land stolen, Hollis's empire built on lies Asa had died trying to reveal. Hollis's voice rose, jagged with sudden fear. "Enough! Bring it here!" His men surged forward, boots pounding, torches waving. Colt fired, the shotgun blast echoing like thunder in the gorge, the lead scattering rock and flame, stalling the rush. "Stay back," he roared, cocking the second barrel. "This box hangs you in every court west of the Mississippi." Hollis snarled, his mask slipping, his voice no longer smooth but venomous. "Courts. I own the courts. I own the law. All you own is a grave waiting to be filled." He drew his revolver, raising it towards the ledge, and Colt braced for the shot, heart steady, knowing Asa's last stand was now his own. Tessa's scream tore the night as the pistol fired, the crack splitting stone, and Colt staggered, the box tipping in his grip, as the papered proof of Hollis's ruin threatened to spill into the dust before the truth could save them. The shot rang off the ravine walls, but instead of Colt falling, the bullet struck the wooden chest, splintering its side, papers bursting loose in the firelight like startled birds. Hollis cursed, his aim thrown by the chaos, and his riders scrambled to snatch the flying pages, their torches setting edges aflame. Colt dropped to one knee, snatching a sheaf before fire claimed it, his hand closing around Asa's scrawl. "Hollis lies," and with that proof in his fist he surged upright, eyes blazing. "You won't burn him out of history," Colt roared, leveling his shotgun. "Not while I breathe." Hollis sneered, advancing, revolver glinting. "Then you'll stop breathing tonight." But before he could fire again, Tessa stepped from behind the boulder, the brass-buttoned coat spread wide in her arms, voice ringing clear. "This was Asa's, and he died keeping it from you. You'll not take it while I stand." The sight staggered Hollis, his shot faltering as if Asa's ghost himself rose from the grave. In that split heartbeat, Colt fired, the blast striking Hollis square, his body thrown back against stone, revolver clattering useless to the dust. Silence followed, broken only by the crackle of burning papers and the ragged breaths of men who'd suddenly lost their master. One by one, the riders dropped their torches, backing into the dark, unwilling to die for lies. Smoke coiled up to the stars as Hollis lay still, his empire of fraud scattered across the ravine floor. Colt gathered the unburned contracts into the chest, pressing Asa's note atop the pile like a gravestone, his chest heaving with a mix of victory and grief. Tessa knelt beside him, her hand steadying his, her eyes wet but unbroken. Finn crept forward, whispering, "Does this mean we can stay, mister?" Colt's throat closed, but he forced words through the ache. "It means more than that, son. It means we start over. Clean." He set the chest under his arm, the weight no longer a burden, but a legacy, and turned toward the eastern horizon where the first light of dawn painted the sky. Smoke still hung heavy, but the sun pressed through, chasing it back, a reminder that even fire yields to morning. Tessa rose with Finn beside her, the coat folded carefully in her hands, and for the first time since Asa's death, Colt felt the world steady again, not because the past was gone, but because its truth had finally burned free. They walked from the ravine together, leaving ashes and ghosts behind, and as the sun broke fully, Colt whispered to the wind, "You kept your word, brother. I'll keep mine." Please like, share, and subscribe to support more true-hearted stories on Echoes of the West. If you had found Asa's coat in her arms that night, would you have believed her or sent her away? Tell us in the comments.